Oh, we are live. That was really quick. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I almost said Thursday.
Wednesday.
uh, nice to be with all of you here today. You guys know me. I'm Nancy Quinn, and I am here with Carleen Lamay of C2 Accounting. She is my bookkeeper. Her team is amazing, and we want to talk today about how to protect your interior design business from financial risk. So welcome, Carleen.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to be here. So, today we're talking about financial risk because you've worked too hard to risk losing your business, right? This is like for a lot of us, our businesses are like our babies. And so, what can we do to protect those babies as they change? Because when you think about it, if it, kind of like having a child or pet, at this the way the business is a infant stage is very different in its teenage stage or in the latter years, right? So the things about the business evolves, and so the risk actually evolves as well. But for most business owners, there's kind of this overlying thread for risk. So things like making sure you have enough emergency funds, and you have enough insurance and things like that. So we're going to talk about some of those things in more detail.
Good. All right. So let's get started. So what would you say is number one to protect them from having financial risk?
This is actually something, the first thing I want to talk about is actually scope creep and making sure you have a good contract in place,
Yeah.
which is it what you really think about when it talks about bookkeeping. But that kind of, I've seen issues, especially with interior designers, where if they've ended up costing them a lot of money and heartache because their contract wasn't ironclad, right? There was always this like room for interpretation, and so they ended up having to make good on things just to protect themselves and to save face when it probably wasn't their fault. So making sure your contract is written in a way that you don't have to deal with things like that.
Yes. And I
And I'm
don't know.
assuming that's something that you talk about a lot in your trainings.
Yeah, because we sell contracts. We created 4 contracts with the
Ah,
lawyer, David Adler. We sell them. There's thousands of designers using them over the years. We revamped them after COVID to add more um, more detail to protect the interior designer. But I'll also say, based on what you're talking about, sometimes the dollar amount that you're protecting yourself against isn't worth going to a lawyer. I actually have a client right now
mm,
who had it's a different situation. It's actually not with a client, it's with an ex-partner of hers. And yeah, they're coming after each other for money. Is it worth then going to a lawyer, right? So we always say also have a little reputation account that you've loaded some money in to
mm.
protect yourself. So should you choose, if you're sued, God forbid, or whether you're trying to protect your company, you have a little money set aside for that in case you choose not to go the lawyer route and lean on your contract. So I agree. Great
Yeah.
contract is needed, but also maybe a little extra. We call it your reputation account. Put a little money aside for when you are faced with protecting your company's reputation.
Well, and the fact that they could buy one from you that's tried and tested is even better than trying to piecemeal it yourself, right? Or God forbid, just pulling something off the internet. Um,
Absolutely.
so another thing you want to think about is insurance, making sure that you are covered for things like cyber liability, which a lot of us don't necessarily think about.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, your professional liability, because a lot of interior designers are on site at clients' homes, making sure they have, um, general liability is going to cover them in case something falls and breaks something at a client's home. So that's super important. Insurance, it costs a lot sometimes, but it's so worth it when you need it, right? It's peace
Yeah.
of mind.
And there's companies out there, we recommend a few to our clients that only charge like $250 for $1 million of general liability, but there's about 10 other insurances that you can get. So depending on your business, and I'll give one quick story. When I was an art consultant, I had liability insurance, but at some point, I guess I had done a training with the Interior Design Society, and I realized, is my employee covered for these hundreds of $1,000s of our work she's driving around with when I'm not available and with my kids? Because at that time I had young kids. And sure enough, I found out no. Had she been hit in the back of her car and all my artwork was there, we would not have been covered. So call your insurance guy. This is great
Yes.
advice from Carleen to protect your financial stability here and protect yourself. Call your insurance guy and make sure that general liability insurance covers your business properly, right?
And remember I said earlier at the start of this conversation about how the business evolves? So I want to give
Yeah.
a personal story of mine. My professional liability, your errors and omissions is what it's called, at least in the bookkeeping world. When I
Hmm.
got that initial policy, I was making a lot less money. I was still very new. It's one of those things, you said it, you forget it. I'm paying every month. And I have a conversation with my new insurance guy. And I'm like, hey, can you take a look at this policy? It's up for renewal. And the amount I was paying was ridiculously low, and it turned out it was because it was based on, what my income was 8 years ago. Now, had I had an
Interesting.
issue today at the income level that I am in, my insurance company may not have covered me because I wasn't paying for this level of income. I was paying for that level. So as your business has grown, please make sure you have the right amount of coverage based on the amount of income that your business is bringing in today, not 10 years ago.
Great advice. Oh my God. Yeah, that's something I'm
All
going
right.
to make sure I relay to all my clients as well. Yeah, really good point. I didn't think of
Mhm.
it. Okay.
Yes, it is. So, and then you mentioned having an account for your reputation, right?
Yeah, we
So
call it
very.
an oops account or a reputation account, whatever you want to call it. A mistake
Mhm.
happens with your client, or something gets delivered and it's damaged, and you're battling with the furniture company or the delivery company or whoever, and you're not through it yet, but the client wants to be made whole and you want to protect your company's reputation, you can have
Right.
some money set aside to do that. And then you can go fight your battles with whoever you think owes the money separate.
And that could be combined with your emergency fund, which every business should have, an
Yes.
emergency fund. One of your biggest ways of managing risk is having cash. I had a conversation with a client last year that, like, I think a lot of interior designers, like last August, for some reason, everyone was kind of going down. It was a slow
Yeah.
point, and she was anticipating towards the end of the year a bunch of new money coming in. And her first instinct was to pay off her car, and she talked about her idle loan. But she also had like a line of credit and some credit cards. It's like, no, no, no. We're not paying off an idle loan, which is 3%. Let's
Right.
keep the
Don't pay
cash,
off your
right?
idle loan if it's only 3%, and you could be making more money in the bank if you have a,
Well,
yeah.
and you want to keep some cash on hand. And for some people, debt is such a bad word for them that they just want it gone. There are ways to use debt in a good way. If you have an idle load at 3%, if you happen to have a car loan at 4%, but you have a credit card at 25, pay off the credit card. Pay off
Right.
the high interest line of credit. Keep cash on hand because there are going to be months where your expenses will outpace your income just because of the timing of things. So just making sure that you have that cash on hand, and you can come commingle them. You can have your reputation fund with your emergency fund, but most importantly, keep them in a high interest account so that you're earning money on your money.
Yes. I remember when I went into my bank and I'm like, do you have a business account that actually earns interest? And, like the bank I went to was, no, we do not have a business savings account that earns interest. So I switched banks,
I
right?
just
Because
opened a savings account like literally last week with Axos Bank, AXOS. They're online. They're a physical bank, but they're online. And let me tell you, they made me jump through hoops to open this account, and FDIC insured. But the current rate is like 3.5, 4%, which is like really, really good right now. So if
yes,
you're going to have a lot of cash that you're storing, try to get some interest on it. It's just a smart thing
definitely.
to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're operating expense account, like I always want all my clients to have between 3 and 6 months of cushion in there. So is that what you mean by emergency fund? Like you
Yeah.
have 3 to 6 months, or you're talking about a separate?
Well, no, that's your operating, but you don't want to keep it in a non-interest bearing checking
Correct.
account. You want to put it into it's still for your operating expenses in case of an emergency, but put it into an interest bearing account so that it's not just sitting there doing nothing. I hate to
Yeah.
see 100,000 sitting in a checking account for like 2 years. I'm going, do you know
I
how much interest you
know.
could have earned on that? So,
I
um,
know. And so many of
yeah.
us were doing that without knowing that there were business interest bearing accounts. So great
You have to
advice.
look for them, but they do exist for sure. So let's just talk about what we just kind of recap what we said here. Make sure that you have your contracts are in order. Make sure you're insured and that your insurance meets the current needs and the current stage of your business. And then make sure that you have cash on hand, that you're reserving cash for long term and for unexpected expenses. Sounds pretty simple, but sometimes I think we need to be reminded of the simple things.
No, absolutely. People need to be reminded of the simple things, including me, right? So I think this was important. I hope everybody watches. And I know that so many people contact me throughout a year saying, do you have a bookkeeper you can recommend? I can't stand my bookkeeper. I can't ask him or her any questions.
Oh
It's so
no.
frustrating when I know you exist and they haven't had a consult with you yet. So I'm telling
Yeah.
everyone who's watching live or on replay, if you are not happy with your bookkeeper and you're an interior designer, please get on with Carleen. Her team is great and they take care of everything, even when you mess up your books like I did.
Well, yeah, we definitely want to make sure that in having those conversations with your bookkeeper on a regular basis, it helps you to manage risk, right? Because it's not about expecting the worst, it's about preparing for the inevitable. And if you have a good financial partner, like a good bookkeeper on your side, you're always thinking about what could happen and how do we, cover all of our bases as best as possible.
Exactly. Okay. All right, everyone, go over to C2 dash accounting. It's up above Colleen's
It's
head.
up above my head.
ECCCG. It's above her head. And set up a consult with her if you're struggling with your bookkeeping.
Yes.
You won't be disappointed at all. So have a great rest of your afternoon, Colleen. I know you're busy, busy, busy.
Thank
Post
you. I appreciate it.
post tax season. How you survived?
Yes, we are surviving. But a lot of people are have extensions, and if you're in North Carolina, our state gave us an extension because of all the hurricanes. So I feel like it's tax season never really ends for a lot of people. So it's
That's true.
ongoing.
All right. All right. Well, go do your
All
thing,
right.
and everyone else, go have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Bye,
See you
everyone.
next time. Have a good one. Bye bye.